So this is part A of the Baby Angel Geronimo editions of the Khoodeelaar television channel being broadcast only on the internet from London in the quote UK. This is timed at 10:30 GMT, but we are starting a few minutes earlier. And the first thing about the Baby Angel Geronimo editions that we can talk about is the promotion of Boris Johnson, the congenital liar, as making a reference, an allegedly hostile reference to a licensed law trader. And the other is the reference in this week's European, yesterday's weekly European, where Alistair Campbell, one of Tony Blair's main liars, is apparently comparing Johnson's criminality with the criminality of Nicolas Sarkozy in France. And the heading to the Alistair Campbell piece reads, like Sarkozy's, Johnson's career should end in a courtroom. Now, the first thing is that is something that ordinary people being made aware of the serial lies perpetrated by Boris Johnson would agree with that opinion. Not necessarily in the same way as Francis Sarkozy lost his career in a courtroom. But the fact that Alistair Campbell was the one who lied continuously for the criminal Tony Blair, and Campbell was the main lying face of Tony Blair while Blair was in post. And ever since the lies that Tony Blair perpetrated for colluding with George W. Bush in the massacre of the innocent people in the Middle East, there have been demands and calls for the holding of the lying massacreist Tony Blair to account for the massacres. And a courtroom is a phrase that applies to those calls, and Campbell has been quite brazenly, shamelessly condemning those who have been calling Tony Blair the war criminal and the liar that needs to be held to account. So how dare Alistair Campbell expect that Johnson will be held to account in a courtroom? There is no precedent. There is no kind of example, that is, in the last few hundred years, where an incumbent or an occupant in the post of prime minister in the UK has been tried in a courtroom. There is none. And compared to the kind of history of the state, the French state and the UK quote state, there is more likelihood of a president of France being held to account or being at least quote put to trial in a court in France, then there is a chance of an equivalent head of government, UK head of government being put on trial. And one of the reasons why that will not happen, that is to say, Johnson will not be tried in a courtroom, is because the entirety of the establishment, including the parliament and the courts, the judiciary, and individual MPs are opposed to the incumbent being held to account in a court of law. The attempt that was made before the election of 2019 by somebody who actually made a series of applications in a magistrate's court to hold Boris Johnson to account through a court, or whatever level of court. The attempt or attempts was or were sabotaged by the courts by looking the other way. So this is a lying stunt by Alistair Campbell, who was the most notorious, nefarious liar during the years of Tony Blair in the post. So we shall come back to the holding to account of Sarkozy, Blair, and anyone else. This is a lying piece in the Daily Mail today, Friday the 8th of October, page 5, at the bottom of page 5. Where the headline is Literature Nobel awarded to UK writer, which is an absolute lie. This is not a UK writer. This man is Abdul Razak Gurnah, who is from Zanzibar in Africa. So the headline should be a Zanzibar writer living in Britain has been given the Nobel Prize. But this is not somebody that should be promoted too much, because Gurnah is a retired professor at the University of Kent. This Gurnah yesterday, for his uncompromising and compassionate writing on the effects of colonialism. Now, Gurnah would not be given this Nobel Prize if he actually opposed colonialism. That's the whole point. The Nobel Prize, which is a Swedish kind of award based on the legacies of Alfred Nobel, is never representative of the truth of the state of literature, if you like. It's a different position with physical sciences. When it comes to the Peace Prize or the Prize for Literature, the Nobel Prize is not representative of the truth of the state of literature at the time or in the particular genre or the particular context. For example, when they awarded Tagore the Nobel Prize in 2013 for his Gitanjali, at the same time there were other very influential writers, including, of course, Muhammad Iqbal. But the Nobel Committee refused to award any of those any prize. And this is more than 100 years. More than 100 years, 110 years, let's say, since Tagore was awarded the Nobel Prize for the Gitanjali. And there have been powerful writers and poets in the whole of the subcontinent. Nobody has been given any prize. Instead, the Nobel Prize has debased itself repeatedly by giving prizes to warmongers and criminals and calling the prizes peace prizes. And the prize deciders of the prize, if you like, have been absolutely stooges to the USA and to the UK. Disproportionate numbers of so-called Nobel Prizes have been awarded, so-called, to people either in the USA or people who are complicit with the worst policies and imperialism and massacres by the USA in the name of civilization. Now, this is something that is bound to change. I mean, it's not changing overnight, but it is going to change. And the equation is going to be reversed, if you like. That is to say that the quality and the values that are allegedly the basis for the awarding of the Nobel Prize and have been the basis for the awarding of the Nobel Prize in each category have been in denial of the truth. And this is going to be reversed, not by the Nobel Committee, but some other phenomenon, some other institution that is going to emerge. And that is going to be accompanied by the rejection of the warmongering that is and has been the dominant kind of feature of the Nobel Prize so far. And this piece in the Daily Mail today on page 15 is condemning Tony Blair's wife, Cherie Blair, for her, quote, role as an advisor to the criminals that have been in posts in various states, including India and in the Gulf states, in the Persian Gulf states, including in this context the man called Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, who has been using the Israeli issued spying software Pegasus to spy on his former wife, Princess Haque, who fled to Britain with her 2 children. So the main heading to this piece by Ian Birol in the Daily Mail is Sherry warrior for social justice is advising a secretive firm selling hacking software to the world's most repulsive regimes. After her, that is Sherry Blair, husband's questionable business links, yet another tawdry saga for the Blairs. Yet another tawdry saga for the Blairs. Now, Tony Blair is, of course, a war criminal, and Sherry Blair has been officially married to him through all his war crimes, and she has not gone on the record as expressing any concern about the war crime that Blair has committed and was committing. And this piece by Ian Birol ends with the paragraph that contains this. Many members of the public will surely feel that the idea, that is Sherry Booth, aka Sherry Blair, really does care passionately about freedom, human rights, and gender equality is brought into serious question by her links to this farm and its terrifying technology. Remember, this terrifying technology sold by NSO in Israel is issued by the Israeli state, has to be approved by the Israeli state. So this is an Israeli state operation business. So we go back to Alistair Campbell and reading the last paragraph in his piece. He's warming up. He's almost excited. He says, I liked a lot about Starmer's conference speech, and saying that Johnson was not a bad man, but a trivial man, was a clever line of attack. It is, however, not true. Johnson is a very bad man, doing very bad things, and one day, as for Sarkozy, there must be a proper reckoning. As I said before, there is no actual example of a British Prime Minister, however congenitally dishonest and corrupt and criminal that particular individual may be. There is no example of a British Prime Minister having been put on trial in a court of law. So, what on earth is Alistair Campbell basing that on? In the European, not this front page piece, but a piece inside. Campbell is described as the editor at large of this thing. And this is a thing that actually is controlled by the likes of Matt Kelly. Matt Kelly is a very rude and contemptuous man. And most of the pieces are written by dubious individuals. Like, as I said yesterday, and I'm saying today as well, Bonnie Greer from Louisiana or Chicago, wherever she is from in the USA. And there is a piece by Peter Kellner. Peter Kellner is a bigoted right-wing racist who for too long was in board with a racist New Statesman before he launched into a right-wing pollster business. And although the piece here in the European is headed, "Everyone's a loser in battle of competence," he did not, Peter Kellner, he kind of posed as a kind of data analyst via the New Statesman, and is the most unappealing, unenlightening, boring, stupid opinion-related commentator that I have come across. Strictly for evidence purposes, I suffered a number of appearances as a member of the audience where Peter Kellner was the speaker. And Peter Kellner persistently failed to deliver any enlightenment. So we'll come to that more about Peter Kellner, New Statesman, and anti-society. We're looking now at the Financial Times of Friday, the 8th of October 2021. And the second piece on the front page is about Newcastle and the demands for holding the Saudi regime and the murderers of the journalist Khashoggi, Jamal Khashoggi, to account. And the Lex column on page 24, which is the last page, has got an entry, 3 entries there, 4 entries there. So the Third entry is about Newcastle, Saudi Arabia. Sports Wash Dosh. It says Mohammed bin Salman hates criticism. Saudi Arabia should therefore spend heavily on players now. Now it has acquired Newcastle United Football Club. This would buy the Gulf state ruler some of the popularity he has lacked in the UK since Saudi agents murdered dissident journalist Jamal Khashoggi in 2018. Well, I have not finished reading it, but I doubt that they will link him with the murder. Money is no object for Saudi Arabia when purchasing prestige and acceptance. Newcastle United has been relegated twice in 20 years and often makes losses. But it has an illustrious history. Moreover, a barrel of OPEC oil has increased 6 times in value since the 300 million takeover was announced last year. Money has been a problem for the Premier League. It could not permit Saudi Arabia to purchase the Magpies while the country was embroiled in a regional spat with Qatar. One element of this was alleged Saudi piracy of English football broadcasts for which a Qatar broadcaster had paid billions. Now, Saudi Arabia and Qatar have settled their dispute. They can transfer their regional rivalry to the football pitches of Europe. Qatar controls Paris Saint-Germain. The terms of the league's suitability test are harder and clearer on business conflicts of interest than human rights, where Saudi Arabia's record is dire. The league says it has received legally binding assurances Saudi Arabia will not control the club. These sound as insubstantial as the waivers oligarchs signed as a sop to governance watchdogs in the notice when listing their businesses in London. Another face saver is the participation of minority investors such as deal mastermind Amanda Staveley. Newcastle should now receive a flood of fresh capital, pushing it into a big fight, big eight of English clubs. And the Premier League can reinforce its position as Europe's wealthiest sports tournament. Now, I've read the whole entry there in full, and it's disgusting because the financial crimes refers to Jamal Khashoggi, but then goes into praising the acquisition of Newcastle by the Saudi regime. And here is a recognition by the Times of the fact that the depraved Defra Fronta, who has been lying against baby angel Geronimo, is wrong because George Injustice denied that there was a crisis about fuel, about HGV drivers, etc., etc. And here, on the front page of the Times today, Friday the 8th of October 2021, is the piece which reads Putin accused of choking gas supply to push up price. Now that is whoever is causing it. The fact is there is a crisis of gas, which is a crisis that has existed for a long time. And yet, the existence of the crisis has been denied, flatly denied by the liar, George Injustice, in the very way that he has been lying against the very innocent baby angel Geronimo. And about the role of the lawyers, here is the piece on page 8 of the same Times, which is about Johnson congenitally lying about various values, which I have to read in order to make them relevant to the lies that Johnson has been telling against baby angel Geronimo in collusion with the depraved DEFRA. Now, this heading is Lawyers on the Attack over Cruella de Vil Jibe. And this is the legal editor of the Times who just put his name there. Boris Johnson has enraged lawyers who criticized government plans to crack down on pet theft with his condemnation of Cruella de Vil QC. I'm still reading the piece by byline to Jonathan Amis, legal editor. So it's not my words, it's his words. The Prime Minister told the Conservative Party conference this week that he had recently read a learned article by some lawyer saying we should not bother about pet theft. Well, I say to Cruella de Vil QC, if you can steal a dog or a cat, then there is frankly no limit to your depravity. Now, before I read that, I stop at the use of the word depravity. So the congenital liar, depraved Boris Johnson, colluding with depraved DEFRA against baby angel Geronimo, is himself using this term depravity against this licensed law trader. He doesn't name Jonathan Amis piece doesn't name the lawyer so far, but we shall come to that in a minute. We shall see if the lawyer can be named or has been named in the piece. Johnson also took a swipe at lawyers in the Labour Party, which is led by Sir Keir Starmer QC, a former director of public prosecution, saying that is Johnson, found it incredible that Labour, now led by a leftish Islington lawyer, voted against tougher sentences for serious sexual and violent offenders. One experienced criminal law barrister who criticized the government proposals on the pet theft published last month accused the Prime Minister of being frivolous. Instead of wasting the time of MPs and parliamentary lawyers drafting laws to criminalize activities that are already criminal and which will have almost no practical effect, Mr. Johnson should address the shortage of judges, the catastrophic collapse in the number of solicitors' firms specializing in criminal law, the pressures on police which lead to serious cases not being properly investigated, and the continuing growth in the backlog of cases in the Crown Court. Matthew Scott told the website Legal Check, nothing in his frivolous speech today even acknowledged the existence of these serious issues. Now, stop there. It is not unheard of. It is not unprecedented. As the baby angel Geronimo has been experiencing, Johnson doesn't. Not only Johnson doesn't fail to acknowledge serious issues and engage in frivolity. In one of events, that is his congenital lying profile. In Dodie Smith's 1956 novel, The 101 Dalmatians, Cruella de Vil attempts to kidnap puppies in order to have their fur made into coats. Last year, Johnson angered lawyers when he accused lefty human rights lawyers and other do gooders of being an impediment to the criminal justice system. Now, this piece is about Johnson's alleged care and compassion for animals, the opposite of what he has been doing against the most innocent baby angel Geronimo. So, this is a piece, diagnostic piece, we are including in this broadcast as part of the evidence that Johnson has been lying and in denial and is corrupt to the core and is congenitally lying. Johnson does deserve to be held to account in a courtroom. That is perfectly factually evident. But he will not. Johnson will not face accountability in a court of law, in a courtroom. And even Alistair Campbell will not support any real campaign for Johnson to be tried in a court of law. Johnson is a supporter of wanton criminality. Johnson is a colluder with the depraved DEFRA. But Campbell has not been talking about the depravity of DEFRA, depraved DEFRA, or the depraved collusion with the depraved DEFRA by Boris Johnson. None of the outrages that apparently exist against Johnson in Fleet Street today really matter, because Fleet Street has not told the truth about Johnson's depravity in colluding with the depraved DEFRA lying and the agenda of lies against the baby angel Geronimo. And none of the lies that Boris Johnson has been peddling every day has been held to account, has been really scrutinized by Fleet Street, including Johnson's brazen denial of responsibility for the many failures that are mounting, many shortages and many crises that are building every day. So even the Guardian is complicit. Whatever Keir Starmer has said about Johnson being a trivial man doesn't make any difference. Even when Fleet Street actually airs or prints or runs almost similar kind of sentences to the ones written for Starmer by Alistair Campbell in the European. Because this thing about the Dubai sheikhs hacking of his ex-wife's phone, they're saying on page 18 of The Guardian today that there is a call for inquiry into Dubai ruler's hacking of ex-wife's phone. This is ridiculous because Brenda, the Queen of England, has been sitting or inviting the same man to sit next to her at the Ascot or whatever races. So even if an inquiry is held, it won't be held anytime soon for a start, but even if it theoretically an inquiry is held about the man abusing his powers and spying on his ex-wife and kidnapping his children, it won't make any difference because, like the Newcastle purchase by the Saudis, I mean, the money, the Saudi money and the Dubai money, these are available for institutional, regular, and brazen bribery in Britain, in the West, openly. So there is a piece in the Guardian on page 19 about a policeman denying raping a woman not in fit state of consent. He did rape her, and he lied about raping her, and now it is confirmed that he is the father of the child the woman had as a result of being raped by him. And there is too much evidence, even in the Guardian, of too many incidents of criminals who are in power in the Gulf states having far too many contracts with Johnson and the UK state and UK businesses. And it is in this piece itself, the piece that is headlined, Call for Inquiry into Dubai Rulers Hacking of Ex-Wife's Phone, because it says a government spokesman, that is UK government spokesman, added, the UK United Arab Emirates bilateral relationship is strong. Well, the strength is only measured in the coins, in the cash. And then highlighted last month's visit of Dubai's crown prince and ruler, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, to London, where the Sheikh met Boris Johnson for a summit at Downing Street. So there is nothing in Fleet Street today, as there is nothing in Fleet Street of any day, that actually is consistent morally, ethically, legally. And in terms of compassion, there is absolutely nothing. Fleet Street is not representative of any moral, ethical, humanitarian, transparency campaign or movement that upholds the rights and the entitlements, even in principle, even in theory, the rights and entitlements of the victims of injustice done by the incumbents, perpetrators in the UK, or others they are in contact with abroad, especially in the Middle East, so-called. Amazing, isn't it? That most of the imperial assertions of civilized values by the likes of Blair and the conservative scum colluding with the ideology is aimed at countries in the Middle East, communities in the Middle East. And yet, at the same time, most of the money, the dosh that is drawn from the Middle East is from the Middle East, other countries, like Dubai, like the United Arab Emirates, and of course Saudi Arabia. And there is no sustained analysis, even in the Guardian. There is no sustained analysis, even in the Guardian, of the wrongs being done daily against democracy, against civil liberties by these regimes. Listen to what I'm saying. These are the regimes that are neighbors to Afghanistan, which is the subject of regular lying propaganda. Afghanistan is like a template of an example of bad things. Afghanistan is not very far from the United Arab Emirates, Dubai, Saudi Arabia, nor is Syria. So there is brazen criminality being done by imperialists. Brazen criminality is being done by the Crusaders. So there is nothing in the Fleet Street Papers that actually examines the brazen criminalities. So why am I talking about the Fleet Street and the Western media? Because looking for printed or broadcast equivalents based in and operated by people in the countries themselves start from Syria or start anywhere from the nearby countries and go all the way to the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, and everywhere. There is no option. I'm not using the term freedom, but I'm using the term option. But the platforms exist for anti-imperialist, anti-crusader, anti-racist, anti-imperialist news, commentary, investigations to be carried out and made available to the people in the local areas, local countries. Now this extends all the way to the whole of the subcontinent of India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. There is no real investigation or investigative journalism anywhere. Now that is not helpful. That is not helping the cause of fighting imperialism, injustice, oppression, fostered by the West or Western countries. That plays a colluding part with the West, Western imperialists and criminals, crusaders of Fleet Street and their equivalents in broadcasting platforms. And you can take the narrative, factual narrative, all the way across the Atlantic and find that North America also has no options available to the people of Asian origin or African origin. Factually investigating daily or regularly the misdeeds and the wrongs and the evils of imperialists, racists, and the crusaders. So where are the moral kind of leaders for the future of the planet? How is it that a teenage child like Greta Thunberg from Sweden is getting the kind of attention that no one else is getting in the same issues about the planet, about the future of the planet itself? And the answer is linked to the fact that historically, for hundreds of years, people in the African and Asian continents, well, we're not including the Far East, so-called, let's say China, for the moment, but the rest of Asia, including the parts of Central Asia, have not provided any example, any sustained example of leading the intellectual movement for safeguarding and protecting the future of humanity. How is this to be explained? First of all, there is no truth. There is absolutely no truth in the claim that there are jihadists. What the Western media and the Western commentators refer to as jihadists are not jihadists in fact. They are not talking about the future of the planet. They are not talking about the future of humanity. They are not talking about the various essential values that must be there in reality, about justice, about human rights, and so on. So what they refer to, what the Western jihadists and imperialists, and in the context anti-Muslims, refer to as jihadists, are in fact forces that are antagonistic with supposed targets based in the West or supported by the West. But there is no universal source, or there are no universal sources for morality, ethics, universal humanity and transparency produced by the original residents, people originally in the two continents, Asia and Africa. And if you look at the actual records, this actually dates back almost to the time of the Greek thinkers and contributors. So it's more than 2000 years old. So why isn't there the comprehensive platform for the whole of humanity provided by the thinkers, campaigners in the two continents? As I said, this guy has been given the Nobel Prize not for originally kind of contributing something that is based on the culture and is produced by the culture in either Africa or Asia. Because he came He fled Zanzibar when he was aged 18. And is now 81 years old. So what was it? What was it that the depraved Defra thought they were doing when they confected, they invented, they conspired to create the lies against the most innocent baby angel Geronimo? Because they thought, being depraved, that this was darkness, because there is no alternative, there is no light coming from Africa or Asia, that the whole land actually represented the whole planet, which is in the darkness, not protected by the light and enlightenment. That is what the depraved Defra were doing and are doing and have been doing. So therefore, Johnson can actually lie right, left, and center. And he's not held to account, contrary to the fantasy published by Alistair Campbell, that Johnson's career, he almost says it, but he doesn't say it. He says should, but he almost says will end in a courtroom like Sarkozy's ended in a courtroom. I mean, the last person to say that about any incumbent in the post of prime minister, no matter how congenitally dishonest, is Alistair Campbell. Because Campbell is the one who still defies those who call for the trial for genocide, trial of Tony Blair for the crime of genocide. And here he is completely, brazenly in denial of that situation and calling for Boris Johnson's career to be ended in a courtroom. There has to be precedent, and there is no precedent. There has to be an example that this happened before. And the one that should have been put to trial in a courtroom is, of course, Alistair Campbell's boss, Tony Blair. Not Cameron, despite the criminality and corruption and greed. Not Theresa May. Not John Major. But Tony Blair, because not even Margaret Thatcher was guilty of a genocide in that way, to that scale. She was guilty of war crimes, but not of genocide in the way that Tony Blair is and has remained. So they know that there is darkness. This is direct and clear latest update on the evidence that George Injustice, the depraved Defra frontman, is a liar about the depth of the crisis, energy crisis, because he said that there is no crisis, just like he says that there is no such thing as innocence when it comes to baby angel Geronimo. So that is a major crime committed by depraved Defra George Injustice, and condoned by the congenital liar Boris Johnson. Both of those criminals warrant being put to trial for wanton criminality that they have perpetrated against the most innocent baby angel Geronimo. But there is no sign that any of the so-called critics of the likes of Johnson and Eustace is almost excused any criticism by the spared any criticism by the likes of the Daily Mail, which is in fact now reviving colluders for the reconstruction of the image of the congenital liar Boris Johnson. They have now revived Petronella Wyatt, who only a few weeks ago was prepared to go on the record condemning Boris Johnson for his lying. Not lying on the issue of the innocence of the baby angel Geronimo, but on other issues. So the Daily Mail may pretend to be concerned about various tax issues, price rise issues, but it's not concerned about the real truth being flouted and the rights being violated by the likes of Johnson and George Injustice. Because of technical reasons, we shall call this edition to an end, and we shall continue the theme in due course later.